Oh, hello there. Yes, well, that was the weekend. Hurrah! Now I've still got some time off, which is quite cool, actually. Anyway, Monday should be dry. Hope you're well. Thanks to those people who pushed me over 100 subscribers. You know who you are. Fools that you are. Anyway, yesterday we had some interesting features of the British establishment who have done their best over the past few years to stoke up as much racism as possible and then suddenly find themselves magically having to justify all the racism that what they've stoked up. And of course it's all our fault. Of course it is. Anyway, we had Zoe Strimple in the Daily Telegraph, who's quite a posh gal from Hampstead Heath and mixes in all the right circles. So she obviously isn't too concerned. Oh yeah, she's very concerned about anti-Semitism. Anyway, Britain has raised a generation of anti-Semites. It might be too late to fix, she says in the Telegraph, and it's worthwhile just pointing out some of the things that she's saying, because she says it's all the fault of the education system, and that's the reason why people are anti-Semitic. It's because they're being taught the wrong things by people like me. But it's worthwhile quoting something in full, which shows what just a brilliant journalist what she is, right? It must never be considered detrimental to community relations to teach about the suffering of Jews. Yet as far back as 2007, it was reported in The Guardian that schools have begun to avoid Holocaust education because they're concerned about causing offence to Muslim pupils or challenging charged versions of history which children have been taught at home, citing a research conducted for the then government. To highlight one shocking example, a history department in Northern City has avoided selecting the Holocaust as a GCSE topic for fear of confronting anti-Semitic sentiment and Holocaust denial. Yes, indeed, which is awful if it was in any way, shape or form true, but it isn't, unfortunately, Zoe. Zoe is quoting a well-known hoax, the Holocaust education hoax from 2007, which was reported in places like The Guardian. The Northern School didn't actually exist. Now, for Zoe's information, I realise it's a bit hard to look these things up if you're a journalist. I mean, facts. But anyway, it's a key stage 3 statutory requirement that young people are taught the Holocaust. Schools can be closed if it isn't. Yes, and it's on several parts of the RE syllabus. It's certainly there at GCSE History if you do Nazi Germany, and some of the others as well in terms of conflicts in the Middle East. For example, that's on the GCSE AQA syllabus. See, I do know what I'm talking about occasionally. Yes, anyway, so it's not the fault of the teachers, Zoe. So let's move on to whose fault it might be. Meanwhile, according to the December polling data, a third of 18 to 24-year-olds in the UK, alongside a sobering 30% of all adults, agreed with the statement, Israel treats the Palestinians like the Nazis treated the Jews, an important part of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism. Yes, indeed, because let's face it, this comes down to the problem, isn't it? Yeah, that people are looking at the facts like children's legs sticking out of rubble and children bleeding in hospital corridors without any power, and children lying dead in the street in pools of blood, and children, starving in refugee camps, and children terrified by bombardment. I could go on 25 times with that, because that's the actual ratio of Palestinians to Israeli citizens that have been killed so far. 1 to 25. But one of the things, of course, that the British people can't do on their own, because they're stupid, is actually make up their minds about moral issues, about right and wrong. So Zoe has to help us out with that, because it's anti-Semitic to blame Israel for anything. And unfortunately for Zoe, and unfortunately for a lot of the Jewish population in the UK, what I would say is, if you're going to align yourself very, very closely with a foreign state, then there might be problems with that. And part of what we're seeing at the moment is that there isn't actually very much anti-Semitism in the UK. Reports of anti-Semitism are on the rise, but it's not really the 1930s, is it? It's not Mosley and the black shirts. It's not even the 1940s, which led directly, riots in the UK to the establishment of the Israeli state, because the British government wanted to get shot. Yeah? So perhaps it could be that British Jewish people could make some better informed decisions about jumping up and down in favour of what is going on in Gaza, because then maybe the rest of us might agree with them. Obviously not, because, we live in a country where there has to be hierarchies of racism. Some people are at the top, and some people are at the bottom. And so long as the right people are at the top, people like Zoe and others who I'll come on to, then that's fine. But if they start to feel threatened, then the rest of us mustn't mess around with racism. Only against certain people. That's the way that works. I mean, she actually sort of has a go in that article about intersectionality. And I would suggest, as member of a number of different minority groups, she's very much benefited from that notion of intersectionality. However, let's move on to everyone's other favourite fan of multicultural, oh no, she isn't, multi-ethnic society, Suella Braverman, who magically popped up on my Twitter feed to stir things up again. Suella Braverman, is she the worst Home Secretary for the last 10 years? I think there's a really good argument for saying so. More divisive than Theresa May, and probably even vaguely more human, or less human possibly, than Priti Patel. I mean, it's a crowded field, really, isn't it? Anyway, she cropped up to say, very much agree with the excellent Robin Simcox here. Whilst the UK is a good example of a multi-ethnic society, isn't it? Multiculturalism has utterly failed. Yes, it's that magical cake and eat it thing, whereby as the woman that she is, from the background she can say, aren't we great here, because nobody has any racism at all, apart from the racists, and the racists are all those other people who are bad, or have been taught badly in schools perhaps, but that's what's bad, so we mustn't, blame brown people, unless of course it's convenient to the government stirring up all that hatred against brown people, like Suella Braverman, In many parts of the country there's been poor integration, people are not speaking English or adapting British values. Yes, we'll come on to the notion of British values in just a second. People living in Britain but not being part of Britain, instead actively loathing Britain. Yes, indeed. Most of the people that have written recent articles and opinion pieces in the Telegraph can fall under that category. Right, the fast pace of immigration has been one cause, so too have the permissive attitudes of those who undermine Britain, authorities turning a blind eye and appeasing those who behave badly. Yes, aren't they, All of those coppers who are sent out each and every weekend to Palestinian marches, pro-Palestinian marches, which actually contain a lot of Jewish people, but don't ever report that, whatever you do, all of those people, and some of them are chanting things that the government have decided are wrong, or they carry banners that the government have decided are wrong, and magically the police aren't arresting them en masse, I mean, I think it's important that they do. Anyone wearing a mask, anyone walking slowly, anyone looking at anybody funny, anyone walking past a synagogue, anyone wearing anything should be arrested, of course. We can build large encampments in Hampshire, I'm sure, to process them all. Of course. Anyway, moving on from that particular rant, a failure to assert British values confidently and positively has led to big problems of mass extremism on our streets, unprecedented anti-Semitism and divided communities. Not really unprecedented anti-Semitism, as I've said. Divided communities. Well, it's bleeding convenient for you at the moment that they are divided, isn't it? Because otherwise their ire and their anger at all the stuff that's been going on for over a decade might be directed at the wrong people. Imagine directing all that stuff at the top. It's quite convenient to have racism, provided it's nicely contained, provided we're being racist against the right people, and the people that look different and smell different and sound different, but not those people, you understand, If you start taking those notions on board, who knows where it might end up? We might end up with some of our mates being targeted, Someone who looks like Suella might be on the receiving end of some racism, and that would never do. Anyway, it's not racist to expect people to sign up to values of respect, fairness, democracy and the rule of law. Well, okay then, let's have a government that does that. Respect, fairness, democracy and the rule of law. Let's apply that to other states in terms of their obligations to, for example, the rule of law. Let's do that. Let's have a moral government, shall we? Instead of one that is an apologist for a genocidal apartheid regime. And these people, of course, are quite happy to sit down and break bread with someone as odious as Douglas Murray, who actually floored me this weekend. I cannot describe my loathings for this human being. So when UNRWA posted up this photograph of the utter devastation that the Israeli war machine has inflicted on a civil population, Douglas Murray says, what about consequences? Maybe your employees shouldn't have taken part in a massacre that started a war. Yes, indeed. You see, it's all their fault. Yeah, the good people of Israel are blameless in all of this. It doesn't matter what they do. Douglas Murray will cheer them on as they bulldoze the final building and they shun the final starving child into the Sinai desert, who will no doubt come back and haunt them in a little bit. Anyway, it'd be nice if we could apply some British values to that, but I don't think these people will. But by God, they sicken me. Anyway, do have a lovely Monday. If you can, it's getting increasingly hard.